Hello, all of you. Welcome to Captain English International Fluency and Conversation Training Program. தமிழ் மீடியத்துக்கு வரவேற்கிறோம். இந்த ஆடியோ ப்ரோக்ராம்னுடைய பார்ட் 1 நீங்கள் கேட்டீங்க இல்லையா? கேட்கலன்னா அந்த எபிசோடு 1 அல்லது பார்ட் 1 கேட்ட பிறகு இந்த எபிசோடும் தொடர்ந்து வரக்கூடிய அடுத்த எபிசோடுகளும் கேட்க வேண்டும். சரிங்களா? இனி நாம் அடுத்த எபிசோடு கேட்டு பார்ப்போம்.
I was taking rest in the house yesterday. I was sitting in a bus when you called me to the cell phone. Rama was reading a novel yesterday. They were playing in the school ground. The children were speaking perfectly. He was translating a storybook. The boy was standing on the wall. They were pouring water. She was selling several varieties of flowers. I was using many types of cars. The third student was speaking loudly when I entered inside. I was taking some books when he called me. They were going to the market. They were writing the homework yesterday. Some friends were sitting in the room when I came from the kitchen. A number of people were standing on the roadside when the accident took place. I was traveling last week. I was reading when he came. They were playing when I saw them in the morning. They were waiting at the bus stop when I reached there. When the teacher entered inside, we were discussing the chapter. Rama was not reading that novel when I went there yesterday. They were not playing in the school ground last week. The children were not speaking perfectly. He was not translating the storybook last week. The boy was not standing on the wall when I saw him in the morning. They were not pouring water. She was not selling flowers in the morning. I was not using many types of cars. The third student was not speaking loudly. I was not taking the book when he came. They were not going to the market when I saw them in the morning. They were not writing the homework when I went there yesterday. My friends were not sitting in the room when I arrived here. A number of people were not standing on the roadside. I was not sitting in a bus when you called me to the cell phone. Was Rama reading a novel when you went there yesterday? Were they playing in the playground? Were the children speaking perfectly? Was he translating a storybook? Was the boy standing on the wall when you saw him? Were they pouring water? Was she selling flowers when you saw it? Were you using many types of cars? Was the third student speaking loudly? Were you taking some books? Were they going to the market? Were they writing the homework yesterday? Were some friends sitting in the room? Were a number of people standing on the roadside? Was not Rama reading a novel? Were not they playing in the playground? Were not the children speaking perfectly? Was not he translating a storybook? Was not the boy standing on the wall? Were not they pouring water? Was not she selling flowers when you saw her? Were not you using many types of cars? Was not the third student speaking loudly? Were not you taking some books? Were not they going to the market? Were not they writing the homework yesterday? Were not some friends sitting in the room? Were not a number of people standing on the roadside? What was Rama doing? Where was he playing yesterday? How were the children speaking? What kind of a book was he translating? Where was the boy standing? How much water were they pouring? How many varieties of flowers was she selling? How many types of cars was he using? Which of the students was speaking loudly? What was he taking? Where was he going? How was he writing the homework? How many books was he bringing? How many people were standing in the room? What were you doing when the teacher came? We were practicing for fluency improvement. Who was sitting in your office when I came there yesterday? My sister was sitting in the office when you came yesterday. Where was he standing when you saw him? He was standing in front of the shop when I saw him. Was he standing in front of the shop when you saw him? Yes, he was standing in front of the shop when I saw him. No, he was not standing in front of the shop when I saw him. Was not he standing in front of the shop when you saw him? What was Rama doing? Rama was reading. Was Rama reading? Yes, Rama was reading. No, Rama was not reading. Was not Rama reading? What was not Rama doing? Where were they playing? They were playing in the school ground. Were they playing in the school ground? Yes, they were playing in the school ground. No, they were not playing in the school ground. Were not they playing in the school ground? Where were not they playing? How were the children speaking? The children were speaking perfectly. Were the children speaking perfectly? Yes, the children were speaking perfectly. No, the children were not speaking perfectly. Were not the children speaking perfectly? How were not the children speaking? What kind of a book was he translating? He was translating a storybook. Was he translating a storybook? Yes, he was translating a storybook. No, he was not translating a storybook. Was not he translating a storybook? What kind of a book was not he translating? Where was the boy standing? The boy was standing on the wall. Was the boy standing on the wall? Yes, the boy was standing on the wall. No, the boy was not standing on the wall. Was not the boy standing on the wall? Where was not the boy standing? How much water were they pouring? They were pouring 2 buckets of water. Were they pouring 2 buckets of water? Yes, they were pouring 2 buckets of water. No, they were not pouring 2 buckets of water. Were not they pouring 2 buckets of water? How much water were not they pouring? How many varieties of flowers were they selling? They were selling 5 varieties of flowers. Were they selling 5 varieties of flowers? Yes, they were selling 5 varieties of flowers. No, they were not selling 5 varieties of flowers. Were not they selling 5 varieties of flowers? How many varieties of flowers were not they selling? How many types of cars was he using? He was using many types of cars. Was he using many types of cars? Yes, he was using many types of cars. No, he was not using many types of cars. Was not he using many types of cars? How many types of cars was not he using? Which of the students was speaking loudly? The third student was speaking loudly. Was the third student speaking loudly? Yes, the third student was speaking loudly. No, the third student was not speaking loudly. Was not the third student speaking loudly? Which of the students was not speaking loudly?
சரி, இப்போ நீங்கள் இந்த எபிசோடு கேட்டங்க இல்லையா? இதே பல முறை கேட்டுட்டு இருந்தீங்கன்னா ஆங்கிலம் பேச உங்களுக்கு நல்ல இன்ஸ்பிரேஷன் கிடைக்கும். இதற்கான டெக்ஸ்ட்டும் ஃபுல் கோர்ஸும் எங்கள் டிஜிட்டல் பேக்கேஜில் அவைலபிள் தான். ஸ்க்ரீனில் தெரிகிற நம்பருக்கு கூப்பிட்டீங்கன்னா உங்களுக்கு விரிவான தகவல் தருவோம். இன்னொரு விஷயம், இந்த சேனல் உங்களுக்கு பிடிச்சதுன்னா சப்ஸ்கிரைப் பண்ணிடுங்க. அப்புறம் பக்கத்தில் இருக்கிற பெல் பட்டனும் அமர்த்துங்க. அப்போ உங்களுக்கு நாங்கள் அப்லோட் பண்ணக்கூடிய எல்லா எபிசோடும் உங்களுக்கு ஒரு நோட்டிஃபிகேஷனாக உடனுக்குடன் வந்துடும். சரிங்களா? அப்புறம் லைக் பண்ண மறக்காதீங்க. உங்கள் நண்பர்களுக்கு ஷேர் பண்ணிவிடுங்க. சரிங்களா? அதே போல் உங்கள் ஒப்பீனியன் கமெண்ட் பாக்ஸில் எழுதுங்க. சரிங்களா? ஓகே, அடுத்த எபிசோடு உடன் எதிர்பாருங்க. தேங்க்யூ ஃபார் லிசனிங். குட் பை.